Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Ottawa. We're here at the request of 4 members of the committee who have requested this special meeting pursuant to Standing Order 106. I'm grateful to everybody for changing their schedules, accommodating that request, and coming back to join us today. Before we jump into the agenda, I just want to quickly welcome Paul Lefebvre, our new Parliamentary Secretary, to the committee. Welcome aboard. Thank you for coming as well. Time is of the essence today, as everybody knows, so I'm going to dispense with warm, long verbal greetings and jump right into things. We have a letter signed by 4 members of the committee, which everybody has seen, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Stubbs, who I understand is going to introduce her motion.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for all of you being here today. We, in this committee, have met before on the urgent issue of the Trans Mountain expansion, including a number of times in June when we debated next steps for the Trans Mountain expansion, and I'm glad that you are all here because of the ongoing crisis around the Trans Mountain expansion and the failure to ensure that it will proceed. In June, when we had then Minister Carr here at committee, I asked him explicitly if he could answer Canadians about when the start date for construction would be, about what the ultimate cost to taxpayers would be, and how he was going to provide the political and legal certainty for the Trans Mountain expansion to go ahead. The Liberals, of course, failed to meet the May 31st deadline set by Kinder Morgan. Then they failed to secure a private sector buyer. And now, as of last Thursday, it's clear that they failed to meet their own standards for consultation and deliver on the process that they themselves announced. This is crucial for our committee and for every Canadian because, of course, the Liberals have spent $4.5 billion tax dollars to purchase the existing Trans Mountain pipeline, and they promised Canadians that that purchase would ensure then that the expansion could proceed. And instead, the Trans Mountain expansion remains in peril, already 2 years overdue, with severe economic consequences for Canada and damage to Canada's reputation as a safe, predictable, fair place to do business. This will have significant and far-reaching consequences on all of Canada. So that's why we're here, to uphold our responsibility as members of this committee and on behalf of all Canadians. This The ongoing delays are no longer acceptable, and the Liberals absolutely must provide a clear roadmap for the Trans Mountain expansion to proceed. That's why we are seeking to bring ministers to committee to answer Canadians very clearly about what their next steps will be, which is a motion I'll get to in a second. The consequences of the ruling on Thursday, which were clear that the failure was during the additional consultation processes announced by the then Ministers of Natural Resources to consult with Indigenous communities. The ruling is clear that that is where the failure happened, and that is why the expansion remains at risk. I must impress upon my colleagues, as I have done in the past, that this has very real and dire consequences, certainly for people who I represent, but for hundreds of thousands of Canadians across the country. 8,000 workers were immediately out of jobs. And these were workers who are often not even reflected in the statistical calculations of the more than 100,000 energy workers who have lost their jobs since the Liberals took office in 2015, because they're often individual contractors or small business owners. And I suggest that if you ask energy workers and people in Lakeland what they think today, they feel betrayed, they're angry, They feel that they are being kicked while they're down by a Liberal government which is all talk and fails to deliver, and in the meantime is implementing policies and legislation that will further damage energy investment in Canada, and with far-reaching consequences long into their future. The Liberals insisted that additional consultation they announced, along with the imposition of the carbon tax on all Canadians, would ensure that the Trans Mountain expansion would proceed. Now, Conservatives have been fighting constantly to get the Trans Mountain expansion built, and as you all know, in February, in the House of Commons, Conservatives asked for the Liberals to table a clear plan for the Trans Mountain expansion to proceed. The Liberals rejected that request. Conservatives requested an emergency debate twice, and the initial debate was rejected, but after the announcement by Kinder Morgan of the May 31st deadline, after which they said, because it appeared it would be untenable if they could proceed with the expansion, that they would abandon their investment of billions of dollars in the Canadian economy and the creation of thousands of jobs. That emergency debate was granted. And we moved motions here in this committee, as well as my colleague Tom Comich in the Finance Committee moved a motion in Finance asking for clarity on the Liberals' roadmap for the Trans Mountain expansion. In 2016, when the Liberals approved the Trans Mountain expansion, then Natural Resources Minister Carr said, quote, "We believe that to meaningfully consult and accommodate Indigenous people in the context of these energy reviews is the principal responsibility of the Government of Canada. That's what we have done, and that is what we will continue to do." And in October 2017, in response to challenges in the federal court, he also said his government was satisfied that the extra consultation with Indigenous communities on the Trans Mountain expansion would satisfy the court. And it gives me no pleasure to be here at this committee to make this appeal today, because Conservatives have supported the Liberal approval of the Trans Mountain expansion from day one, agreeing that the expansion is in the national interest. And Conservatives, like energy workers and Canadians right across the country, believe the Liberals when they said the additional months of consultation with Indigenous communities by the ministerial panel and by the cabinet members would ensure that the expansion could proceed. But the ruling on Thursday is very clear that it was the failure on that process which has put the Trans Mountain expansion at continued risk. And these failures will devastate energy workers, their families, the whole Canadian economy, and the 43 Indigenous communities who had mutual benefit agreements on the Trans Mountain expansion all along the route. But it is, as we've discussed multiple times in this committee, just one more in a long list of major energy projects that have been cancelled or abandoned because of the Liberals' failures. Of course, it comes in the wake of the abandonment of Energy East because of the last-minute rule changes and the double standard applied to that application by the Liberals, a standard that didn't apply to any other pipeline, that doesn't apply to infrastructure in other major sectors, and that certainly doesn't apply to foreign oil. And the Liberals also, of course, outright vetoed the previously approved Northern Gateway pipeline, killing opportunity for the 31 Indigenous communities that had secured mutual benefit agreements worth more than $2 billion, including opportunities for skills and labor development and education. The Liberals now have also jeopardized the potential Eagle Spirit Energy Corridor and the hard work of more than 35 Indigenous communities by ramming through a tanker ban on BC's northern coast, which of course only actually applies to the on and offloading of crude and persistent oils at ports and creates a scenario in which foreign takers can potentially continue to travel in the area because it doesn't actually enforce the voluntary exclusion zone. And now, of course, the Trans Mountain expansion's mutual benefit agreements with 43 Indigenous communities have been jeopardized, along with thousands of jobs and billions in revenue. And this is why this issue is so important to all Canadians, because not only will the Trans Mountain expansion generate jobs for pipeline workers themselves now and long into the future, of course it's also directly related to the long-term sustainability of Canada's energy sector in the future, and it will deliver millions of dollars in government revenue to municipal governments, to the Alberta and British Columbia governments, and to the federal government overall. When the approval was overturned last week, Ryan Bruce, the Director of Government and Public Relations for the union CLAC, said, quote, "Our members were happy to be working. They were expecting long-term employment on the project." And Richard Masson, an executive fellow at the U of C's School of Public Policy and the former head of the Petroleum Marketing Association, said, quote, "Those guys will be sitting at home waiting for something else to come along. There is nothing as big as this." And so because there's nothing as big as this is why we are gathered here today in this emergency meeting to request action and accountability from the Liberals, who owe answers now more than ever because they have made Canadians the owner of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So it is their obligation and their responsibility to disclose urgently and clearly exactly what the next steps will be for the expansion to proceed. I would remind my fellow members of the committee of words of Chief Ernie Cray of the Sheam First Nation. He talked about the impact of Trans Mountain on his community, and he said, quote, "In my opinion, if Trans Mountain doesn't proceed, hundreds of millions of dollars will be forgone to First Nations all the way along the pipeline route." Why I say this is that, taking my own community as an example, we negotiated really hard. He said, "It was really my young council, they're a little over half my age, that negotiated this agreement. My young council negotiated for a year and a half or more, night and day in some instances, with a pretty tough team on the other side, Kinder Morgan's team, and yet we reached a mutual benefits agreement." And he said, "I want to stress mutual benefits to the proponent and benefits to our community." He said, "The jobs that result from the expansion are not one-shot jobs that are there for a year or two and that are then gone when the pipeline is concluded. That's a terrible misrepresentation of things." He said, "What we've negotiated will be lasting training and lasting jobs, and over the entire life of what I hope will be the new pipe that will come from Alberta to Tidewater in British Columbia. Already our community is alive with excitement. Our young people every day come to me and say they want to get trained, they want a job, and they want to say goodbye to welfare. To us, it means millions of dollars. To my band alone, a community of approximately 540 people. I know what it means. I know it also means a lot to many other First Nations who haven't stepped up and spoken out, but who also have agreements that are perhaps comparable to ours." And Mike Lebrede, the former chief of the Whispering Pines Clinton Indian Band, said, quote, "I want the money from our resources so that we can pay for our health, so that we can pay for our education, so that we can pay for our elders, so that we can pay to protect our environment, so we can build better pipes, we can build better bridges, and we can build better railways." Those words express the importance of the energy sector to the Canadian economy overall. And the Liberals are failing Canadians by destroying investment confidence in the energy sector in Canada during their time. My colleague is shaking his head, but the reality is this, that under the Liberals, more energy investment has been lost than any other time frame in 70 years. $100 billion of energy projects cancelled, and more than 100,000 Canadians right across the country whose livelihoods depend on the energy sector are out of work. Energy is Canada's #1 private sector investor and Canada's second biggest export. It literally underpins the entire Canadian economy. So the crisis around the Trans Mountain expansion, which is a direct result of the Liberals' repeated failures to act and broken promises and empty words and sham of support for this crucial infrastructure, the consequences are far-reaching and wide, and this issue is about confidence in Canada as a place to invest, to do business, and about jobs and opportunity long into the future, which provides revenue to governments to provide core social services and programs for Canadians right across the country. Because of the added costs and red tape that the Liberals are adding to the energy sector and right across the economy, Canada is becoming uncompetitive, which the finance minister himself admitted recently, particularly against the United States and other oil and gas producing countries around the world. And the lack of crucial pipeline infrastructure, the estimates are that it costs the Canadian economy anywhere between $10 and $15 billion a year. The Bank of Canada, of course, is predicting no new energy investment in Canada after 2019. And that is a direct result of the Liberals' anti-energy policies and legislation damaging Canadian competitiveness through higher taxes and added red tape. U.S. investment in Canada is down significantly, while Canadian investment in the U.S. is up. And Canada and the United States is clearly positioned as Canada's major energy competitor. Estimates are that the U.S. will provide 80% of the world's growing oil demand in the next 3 years. So this flight of energy capital from Canada is a crisis, and it is the big picture around the emergency facing the Trans Mountain expansion. I think Canadians are right to ask what on earth the Liberals have been doing since the approval of the Trans Mountain expansion nearly 2 years ago. How it could be that as of today, there is no plan, no response, no concrete next steps for the expansion to go ahead. I think that it is our duty on this committee, when we have the chance, and I hope we do, to ask the ministers how it could be that they were not prepared for the decision on Thursday, for either scenario or for either outcome, how it could be that they went ahead and made an expenditure of $4.5 billion with this risk still facing the Trans Mountain expansion, and to date it's been crickets. There are no announcements, there's no concrete steps. All the response from the Liberals have been, as it continues to be from the Prime Minister today, empty words, just professing support for the pipeline over and over and over again. Meanwhile, anti-energy activists who have been coordinated in their opposition to shut down the Trans Mountain expansion, aided in fact by the Liberals' approval of tax dollars to fund summer jobs, to oppose specifically the Trans Mountain pipeline and expansion. Those anti-energy activists did exactly what they said they were going to do. They used every tool in the toolbox to delay this expansion and to stop it. And Canadians have a right to ask now what exactly the Liberals are going to do to ensure this Trans Mountain expansion can proceed. There was, as you all know, an announcement in Alberta a month ago where Minister Sohi echoed the empty words of previous ministers and of the Prime Minister that he was sure the Trans Mountain expansion could go ahead. And it was a photo op with shovels in the ground, and the actual representative of Trans Mountain that day said, construction may start next year, we're not sure, no date for the in-service date. Just like when Carr came here to the committee in June and couldn't answer any of those questions either. There are options clearly available to the Liberals for next steps to ensure the expansion should go ahead. We hope to see them make those proposals both when they come to this committee, but certainly by the start of session on September 17th. By then, I think it's very fair for us to expect the Liberals to have delivered a clear plan to Canadians about how they are going to ensure this expansion will go ahead, because they owe that accountability to the owners of the pipeline, which, because of the Liberals' failures, is now every single individual Canadian. So I think, frankly, it's galling that the Liberals have not yet announced a plan to move forward. I'm sure, given the conversations we have around this table, I accept all of our words in good faith, that all my Liberal colleagues agree with me, that this issue is urgent and that the Liberals owe those answers to Canadians. So I will move my motion that, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the Standing Committee on Natural Resources study the federal government's actions with regards to the Trans Mountain Pipeline purchase and the Trans Mountain Expansion project, that 6 meetings be allocated for this study, that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Natural Resources appear before the committee for an hour each at the first meeting of the study, that the first meeting be held no later than September 6th, 2018, that this study be concluded before November 2018, that the meetings be televised, and that the committee report its findings back to the House.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. Has everybody been provided with a copy of the motion? Okay, we have agreement around the table to discuss the motion. So, Mr. Cannings, you're next in line.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. I know some of you cut short your summer plans. I know I should be sitting in a dentist chair right now, so I'm concerned about that. But so I think this is an important subject. I agree with the Conservatives that we need to talk about this, perhaps for completely different reasons, and I would support the motion. We're obviously here today in this special meeting because of the recent Federal Court of Appeal decision to quash the federal government's approval of the Trans Mountain Expansion project. And the court quashed the project, or the approvals, based on 2 errors made. One was in the environmental assessment part, the lack of consideration of the marine transport issues. And also the error was inadequate consultation with First Nations. Now the Conservatives here are, of course, gleefully blaming the Liberals for this mess, and it's true the Liberals do deserve some of the blame here, but the irony in the calling this meeting is that this is a problem that was created by the Conservatives in the previous government. And it's doubly ironic, you know, for instance, to hear Jason Kenney complaining about the incompetence of the Liberals in this file when he was at the cabinet table when this mess was created. And it's the Liberals who ran on a promise to clean up this mess, to redo the approval process for Trans Mountain with a new system, and then they failed to do that, and that's why we're here today. So it's the Conservatives creating this mess, the Liberals failing to clean it up, and you know, I hate to say I told you so, but that's why we're here. You know, in their rush to get pipeline projects done, the Conservatives gutted the Fisheries Act, the Navigable Waters Protection Act, the environmental assessment process, and on their watch, the NEB hearings into the Trans Mountain expansion were widely criticized for being too narrow in scope, didn't properly consult with First Nations, and the courts also quashed the approval of the Northern Gateway pipeline for much the same reason as they cited here. So it's kind of a pattern. Both the Liberals and the NDP, as I said, ran on that promise to redo the Trans Mountain expansion approval process under a new process with more rigorous science and more community input. The Prime Minister repeatedly said this on the campaign trail, but they broke that promise and instead simply had a ministerial panel tour through the region with very short notice to hear from First Nations and other communities, businesses, and concerned citizens about the project. Nothing was even officially recorded at these meetings. The panelists simply took their own notes and produced a report at the end of the process. And that report posed 6 questions that they felt the Liberal government had to answer before making their decision on the project. And as far as I know, those questions have never been properly answered. Now, one of the 2 critical errors the government made, according to the Federal Court of Appeal, was the failure to properly consult with Indigenous peoples. The consultation process was simply bureaucrats who were sent out to listen to First Nations concerns and relay those concerns to Cabinet. As the court repeatedly states in the decision, they were simply note takers. There was no attempt made to actually address these concerns. In fact, the consultation team and the government apparently mistakenly believed they couldn't add any more conditions on Kinder Morgan than the NEB had done. So why bother consulting if you can't make any change? And that's what the court found was the critical error. And one example of that failure is the concern of the Coldwater First Nation, who wanted the pipeline to take an optional route, the west route, so it avoided crossing their aquifer. That's a big concern. But there's no evidence that actually acting on that concern was ever considered. And I just want to quote a couple of paragraphs from the decision here around the consultation process. It starts, good faith is required on both sides in the consultative process. The common thread on the Crown's part must be the intention of substantially addressing Aboriginal concerns as they are raised through a meaningful process of consultation. And that the controlling question in all situations is what is required to maintain the honour of the Crown and to effect reconciliation between Crown and the Aboriginal peoples with respect to the interests at stake. And those are quotes that the court took from a previous ruling from the Haida Nation case. You know, so this is not news. This is not, the government knew this before they went into the process. And the decision goes on to make 2 final points on consultation. It says, first, when the Crown knows or ought to know that its conduct may adversely affect the Indigenous right or title of more than one First Nation, and we've heard concerns around that in there, it says each First Nation is entitled to consultation based upon the unique facts and circumstances pertinent to it. So if half the First Nations along the route were adequately consulted, or felt they were adequately consulted, and half felt they weren't, it's just not good enough. You have to consult with every First Nation. And secondly, it's important to understand, this is again a quote from the decision, it's important to understand that the public interest and the duty to consult do not operate in conflict. As a constitutional imperative, the duty to consult gives rise to a special public interest that supersedes other concerns commonly considered by tribunals asked to assess the public interest. In the case of the board, a project authorization that breaches the constitutionally protected right of Indigenous peoples cannot serve the public interest. And I just earlier this year, I put a question on the order paper about the 6 questions that the ministerial panel posed, and I'll just want to quote one paragraph on the answer I received from the government that pertains to this consultation, and it says, while there are Indigenous communities opposed to the project, there are others in support of it. The goal of free, prior, and informed consent is to ensure a holistic approach to interests through transparent processes aimed at building consensus. It is the same goal at the heart of the government's current legislation to modernize Canada's environmental assessments and regulatory reviews. I could go on, but it just, to me, this shows the government doesn't get it. They're talking about building consensus within First Nations. It's each First Nation has the right to proper consultation, and when they talk about bringing in Indigenous rights, for instance, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, into modern Canadian legislation, they failed to do that in Bill C-69, the bill that updates our environmental assessment process. So the government knew the proper way forward, and they've decided to do something quite different. So I'll just finish my comments on consultation by saying that the government knows what proper consultation is. They should. It's not an impossible task. It's been done before. It just requires more effort and that sincere desire to address concerns, to address the concerns, rather than just writing them down. And we've heard here in this committee about some good examples of that. The Squamish process regarding wood fiber LNG. We've heard how the Squamish Nation approached that and how that worked. It took some more effort, but it was done properly, and they got to the end game. And we've heard numerous examples in the mining industry. I think the mining industry has some great examples we can follow on how to properly consult with Indigenous peoples and bring them into the benefits of resource extraction. Now, the other area the Court of Appeal pointed out was the failure to include concerns about marine transportation in the Trans Mountain Expansion Approval Study. One of the main concerns there is the status of the southern resident population of orcas, something we've heard a lot about in the news this summer, various news items on the plight of that population. Now, the Liberals are relying on their ocean protection plan to cover off those concerns, and it's a plan that claims to offer a world-class oil spill response. You know, this summer I was in Spokane, Washington, attended the Pacific Northwest Economic Region meetings that brings together legislators from across, Oregon, Washington, over to Saskatchewan, up to Alaska and the Yukon Northwest Territories. And I talked to American legislators and other people about the Ocean Protection Plan. And one thing they said repeatedly, the ones that were very apprised of the situation, said that, Canada calls this a world-class plan, and it's world-class only in the sense that it kind of meets basic world standards. It's not world-class in the sense of being one of the best. And they pointed out that they have a very highly, a very modern way of tracking shipping down the Pacific coast that Canada does not. They want Canada to be part of this system so that we can act proactively when trouble occurs, and Canada has been stonewalling these attempts. So they feel that they have a real world-class system, and they're concerned about increasing oil tanker traffic off our coasts because they feel we're not putting that extra effort in. So I'll just close here by saying that the actions of this government and the previous Conservative government have not only delayed these projects that they feel are so important to Canada, they have polarized public opinion on pipelines and resource extraction in general. When people who are concerned about the environment or First Nations reconciliation are labeled foreign-funded radicals, it makes a wide public choose sides and makes it very difficult to have a reasonable discourse. And I think there's a way forward to reduce this polarization. I think it's important as a nation that we travel that path, because right now it's very difficult to have a polite discourse on pipelines or a lot of things, climate action in Canada. And, I've been involved in a number of meetings here in Ottawa with a group called Positive Energy out of the University of Ottawa. I'm not sure if anyone else here has gone to those meetings, but at their goal is to find ways to bridge that gap, to bring these sides together so that we can have these important conversations. And I was at one of their meetings and happened to be sitting next to Nick Nanos, the pollster. He had done some polling for Positive Energy, and that polling found that only 2% of Canadians had high confidence in our energy regulatory system, in the National Energy Board, essentially. And I won't go into all the details, but he said there was a path forward through his polling. He said the path forward is through more involvement of First Nations and local communities to bring those voices into the national discourse, into the regulatory process. That would give people more confidence there. And so we have to to look down that path. And so just say, to finish, the NDP was criticized for our call to redo the Trans Mountain expansion process under a proper system. Critics said it would take too long, an extra year or two. Well, here we are 3 years later, and we're back at square one. So the court decision is a reminder that we have to put the effort in at the start. There are no shortcuts, and we feel it's time for a thorough and critical look at our energy strategy in Canada, time to invest boldly in the clean energy sector to provide good, long-lasting jobs in a sector that is the true future of the world energy market. And we feel that purchasing old pipelines is not proper use of public funds. Let's invest in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cannings. Only thing I didn't understand is whether you're glad you're not at the dentist or you're happy. So.
Well, my tooth is bothering me, so I'd kind of like to be there.
Okay. Mr. Saray, you're next.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to welcome all the members of this committee who are here today. And also notice there's additional members of the committee that are here today, so welcome. And so we're doing important work in our ridings. So I'd like to thank committee members for moving this motion at our committee. It's really important to have this opportunity to discuss things.
Stubbs and MP Canning for sharing your point of view today about this very important project. We've heard some similar arguments the previous motions in May and June, Mr. Chair. So we want to make sure that we continue with this very, very important project. The Trans Mountain project is really, as we repeatedly talked about, is really an investment in Canada's future. Our government continues to have this project, the confidence that it will get built. We have received the ruling from the Federal Court of Appeals, and we are taking the appropriate time to review the decision and access the next steps. It's really important to recognize, Mr. Chair, that for the past 10 years, the Harper Conservatives had the opportunity. They had the opportunity to diversify Canada's export markets and to build pipelines to Tidewater. The Conservatives could not get it done. We will. When we look at our government's position, and we inherited a flawed environmental review process, it really made, we've really made some significant efforts to improve this process. We're going to review carefully the decision to ensure that we are meeting the high standards that Canadians expect us when it comes to protecting the environment and meeting our obligations to consult with Indigenous peoples. Conservatives believe, still till today, that we have to make a choice between protecting the environment and growing the economy. Mr. Chair, we know that we could do both. We cannot also, it's very important to state, we can't go backwards to a time when environmental protections and meaningful conversations with Indigenous people were seen as an option by the previous Harper government. That is the approach that the Harper government took, and that's the approach that the Conservative Party is still taking, and it's an approach to put us in a position, Mr. Chair, that we are in now, that we're in today. And it's a sure way to continue to not to build any pipelines. So when we look at the process here, we've got to make no mistake. Our government chose to pursue this project with confidence because the facts and evidence demonstrate that it is in the national interest. This was not our first choice, but it is the right choice to protect thousands of jobs and to ensure this project moves forward in the right way. Monsieur le Président.
Chair, the expansion of the Trans Mountain pipeline is a real investment in our future, the future of our country. And the government is moving forward with confidence with this project. We inherited an environmental process that was flawed, and we've made efforts to improve the process. We're going to examine the ruling so that we can make sure that we are respecting high standards that Canadians expect in terms of protecting the environment. And we're also meeting our obligations to consult with Indigenous peoples. We have decided to support this project because evidence has shown that it is really important and it's in the national interest of Canada. This wasn't our first choice, of course, but it is the right choice to protect thousands of jobs and to make sure that this project moves ahead.
To be hearing opposite views on this today at the committee level. It's really important that we take the time from our summer constituent time to really discuss this important project. This is not the first time we've discussed this, Mr. Chair, at the committee. Since we've heard some of the views in May and June and just today, I would ask, Mr. Chair, if you would consider to the committee here if we could put this motion to a vote.
Is there agreement around the table to vote on the motion now?
Point of order.
No? Okay, so there's no consensus. Does that conclude your remarks, Mr. Saray? Okay, thank you. Mr. Poilievre, you are next. I just want to point out Mr. Poilievre is not a regular member of the committee, but unless there's any objection from around the table, I intend to let you make some remarks.
Thank you very much. When the government nationalized the existing Trans Mountain pipeline, it released a statement that said, and I quote, "To ensure its timely completion, the Government of Canada has reached an agreement with Kinder Morgan to immediately restart construction on the Trans Mountain expansion project. The Government of Canada will guarantee financing for the 2018 summer construction season through a loan guarantee from Export Development Canada. This guarantee will ensure that construction work on the project is restarted without delay." That was the justification the government offered for a decision that's unprecedented in a generation to nationalize a massive piece of private sector energy infrastructure at the expense of 4.5 billion Canadian tax dollars, an expense that fell on the shoulders of our taxpayers and is now paying for the construction of pipelines in the United States of America that will compete with Canadian businesses. Now, I see members of the government today are trying to absolve Justin Trudeau of his failures on pipelines, and certainly his supporters will try to externalize the failure that this ruling represents. Unfortunately for them, the facts do not support that exoneration. The facts are very clear to the contrary. The member across the way called the process flawed. Well, he's right. It was Justin Trudeau's process. It was a process approved by Justin Trudeau's cabinet in 2016, almost a half year after he took office. If he thought the process that he inherited did not work, then he could have changed it any way he liked. He, as Prime Minister, is responsible for the machinery of government. He is the head of the Governor and Council, which is the Cabinet, and that body had the final decision on this particular proposal. And the portion of the consultations with Indigenous people with which the court found fault happened months after Trudeau became Prime Minister, happened entirely under his watch. That, of course, is the phase 3 of the process. So we appreciate that the government is trying to reach back into the past and blame governments that were long out of office when the offending mismanagement occurred. We expect that they will try to blame everybody but themselves. But our job as Parliament is to hold the government accountable, to have ministers come to this committee and explain why the Trudeau government failed to properly consult Indigenous people, why it failed to meet its own environmental standards, why did the Governor and Council approve the project with these flaws included, rather than properly executing the consultation and the consideration so that it would be court-proof. We need answers to those questions about this government's failures, again, that occurred exclusively after it took office. The second reason we need these hearings is to hear the plan. The government said, as I quoted, that construction would be restarted without delay. That was back in spring. We're now entering the fall season, and we have no idea when shovels will be in the ground. The government has the duty to come before this committee and give us timelines. 8,000 workers have lost their jobs. Thousands more will suffer. Workers in the oil sands will have less opportunity because the ability to get our product to market has suffered another serious blow under this government. Those workers deserve to know when construction will start and when the project will be completed. Now, normally, a government would say, well, that's in part up to private industry because private industry would normally own and operate this kind of infrastructure. But unfortunately, we are all the shareholders of this monstrous Liberal boondoggle. $4.5 billion has already poured into this project, and that money has not and will not build a single centimeter of new pipeline. Every additional piece of construction on the expansion, if it ever happens, will come at additional expense to Canadian taxpayers. This all for a project that in almost every other advanced country in the world would be funded exclusively and profitably by the private sector. So, we all represent the shareholders, and we want a shareholder meeting because management has failed. And we have $4.5 billion of taxpayer money that has now gone out the door for a project that this government cannot even begin to complete because a court found that the Prime Minister's process violated the law and the procedure necessary for it to occur. And if the government has nothing to hide, then it should have nothing to fear in bringing management for this project before this esteemed committee to answer questions on behalf of the taxpayers who are footing the bill and the workers who are out of jobs because of this failure. And so I support Shadow Minister Stubbs in her motion, and I will be voting in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. It's a valid point. You don't actually have a vote, Mr. Poilievre, but thank you. The fact that you would vote that way doesn't come as a surprise to anybody, I can assure you. Mr. Cullen, I understand you have some brief remarks.
Very brief, Chair. That would be okay. I was thinking of the term shareholder because it's been discussed. Kinder Morgan had a shareholder meeting the day of the court decision. I forget the exact number, 99.5%? 5% agreed. I want to meet the 0.5% who voted against the greatest swindle in private public history. Yeah, Canadians are wondering if they get a say in this because, as has been indicated, we're shareholders too. I guess I understand Mr. Serret's point, and it was a question I was hoping might be revealed, an answer might be revealed today from the government was, will they commit to not appealing this decision, because if I don't know if committee members have read the court decision, but it's very instructive, very illuminating, Chair. I don't know if you've had time. It's quite long, but the piece around consultation is informative as well, because the federal court actually refers to the Supreme Court itself in their standard of the duty to consult. It would be worrisome to me if a federal government who prides itself in being defenders of the Charter and our Constitution would attempt to appeal a decision that is based exactly on constitutional rights that have been enshrined. I think the judges, in their unanimous decision, made something very important for us to know. So that's one thing it may be too soon. Mr. Sade probably doesn't have that in his well-prepared notes as to whether the government's decided yet to appeal, but I hope they don't, because it's talk about throwing good money after bad. There were some concerns from some of the groups participating in this review process early on that it was rigged, that it was set in one direction and only in one direction. We have found out from the court's hearings now that the NEB and the what's called the Phase 3 consultation, the very tacked on the end consultation by the government, as my colleague Mr. Cannings has said, simply took notes, but didn't believe they had the power to do anything about it. And there's an irony that must be appreciated by my colleagues across the way and by Canadians, that if the government had actually and sincerely listened to what was being told to them in that consultation round with Indigenous peoples, the number one concern that was raised by every group was tanker traffic. The number one concern that was raised was tanker traffic. It is somewhat ironic that this permission, the approval, was shot down on two things. One was the failure to properly consult, and the second one was to not include tanker traffic in the decision that was put before Cabinet. And here's the rub, hey? There's some really sensitive species that would be impacted by this. The NEB did look at this. They didn't include it in their decision, but they did a little study of it and found out that the orca population in particular would be harmed by increased tanker traffic of 700% in the Salish Sea. If they had included that as part of their review, it would have triggered a federal law called SARA, Species at Risk Act. And it was almost like the NEB and the federal government didn't want to invoke SARA by excluding tankers out of their decision-making process. And this is where I'll argue with my friend, Mr. Poilievre, who says, Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. It's a bit strange that a process that his government, while he sat at the cabinet table, along with the then Prime Minister and now Leader of the Opposition in Alberta, Mr. Kenney, said that this is a good process for Canada. All Canadians, I assume, maybe I shouldn't make that assumption, including Indigenous peoples, and that this process is categorically been shown to be a failure. And I have the quote from the now Prime Minister when asked during the last campaign in which we all participated, would this pipeline we're talking about today, be put through a new review, a better review? And he said yes. I might be gullible. I believed him because it was a straightforward question and he gave a straightforward response. And I thought, okay, because clearly the last way of making a decision created by the last government fails, not just in court, but it also fails our responsibilities, I believe, as leaders in the country. So when Mr. Trudeau said, yeah, I'll change it, and I'm going to change it for Kinder Morgan as well, for the Trans Mountain, I believed him. And he didn't. He didn't. I didn't think Mr. Harper and Trudeau had so much in common. I'm now seeing that on this one issue at least, not in style, certainly. No one's going to accuse the two of them for being misidentified as the other. But in terms of substance, when it comes to pipelines, Canadians are going to ask themselves, what's the difference? I'll only say this, Chair, and I'll end here because I know this committee's time is precious, and I used to sit on this committee, and I enjoyed this committee because I found it was one of those committees, maybe one of the rare ones in Parliament, where we could try to find common ground on things that were important to Canadians. And the natural resource sector is important to Canadians. I live in northwestern British Columbia. We knock down a lot of trees and kill a lot of fish. It's the way people put food on the table. Yet we've come to realize in the Northwest that shortcuts, trying to skirt the law, trying to get quick approval for things that we think we desperately need right in the moment, doesn't work. It doesn't work in court, and it doesn't work in the long term for our economy that everybody has been talking about. Because let's remind ourselves what we're talking about. Is the federal government putting public money to extract resources in their rawest form to send overseas to be enhanced and then sold back to us, allegedly? It's economic suicide. I think the committee is charged with this task. I hope the government takes this opportunity, because my grandmother used to say, never waste a good crisis. And if people are feeling like this is a crisis, this is an emergency, this is how do we get product to market, how do we get things done, I thought the lessons were pretty clear on the Northern Gateway Pipeline, Chair, one that I was familiar with. We watched it go through the courts. We watched a bad consultation process. We felt the NEB was what was called a captured regulator. They weren't being fair to our communities and hearing our concerns. I thought the government would learn that lesson if they were so committed to moving oil in pipelines. And yet here we are again. Another pipeline trying to get to the West Coast with a process that's not just legally flawed, but I would say morally flawed, when we don't properly take up our responsibilities as legislators and make laws that obey our Constitution, which is what we see in front of us. So a crisis somewhat predicted and very unfortunate, because it's creating, as you know, Chair, a lot of distress to our neighbors to the east in Alberta. A lot of energy workers are wondering what the future holds. And for those of us in British Columbia, we share this very much with our Alberta cousins. Passion for home and for community, fierce pride in where we come from, and defenders of where we come from. And unfortunately, it feels more and more like the laws and the way that they're being interpreted pit one versus the other. And that's unfortunate. So I hope we take up this study. I know Mr. Cannings is a lot more thoughtful and considerate than I am and looks at these things deeply, and I think this would be an opportunity for all our committee members to really dive into what went wrong here and what exactly are the options for the government, because they don't seem to have much in the way of response today, and people sure are looking for one. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Cullen. Mr. Harvey.
I think you should see if there's a. I don't have anything to add. I want to know if they put it to a vote.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Put it to a vote.
You're moving to put it to a vote? Okay. Just so I'm clear, are you moving to adjourn debate, or what is it exactly you're seeking to do?
Put it to a vote.
Okay. Is there
On
agreement?
Mrs. Stubbs' motion.
Okay. Shall we put it to a vote then?
That's all right, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Schmale.
Thank you, Chair, and I do appreciate the comments from my colleagues. I just want to add a few more items here, especially speaking from someone from Ontario who saw the effects of Liberal policies in action, specifically talking about General Electric in the city of Peterborough. That has been a company in the city since the 1800s. It's actually known as the Electric City. And General Electric had a contract to build motors for the Energy East pipeline. Now, when the Liberals changed the rules halfway through the process multiple times, causing TransCanada to cancel their project, 300 jobs at General Electric were lost, just like that. It was the straw that broke the camel's back for General Electric. Those 300 people are out of work, no longer receiving a paycheck, and the ripple effects that happened afterwards. A major factory no longer in the city of Peterborough, good paying jobs as a result of the cancellation of the Energy East pipeline. Now, it should be noted that there are 3 big companies that have applied to build pipelines in this company, and all 3 are no longer doing so under the Liberal rule. $4.5 billion to build a pipeline right now. nationalized a pipeline, and yet another failure. They claimed they were going to get it built. They claimed they were going to move forward, and yet we are seeing that money, taxpayer dollars, $4.5 billion, going to the United States to build pipelines and other energy projects in the United States, not in Canada. We are seeing billions leaving this country for projects outside our borders. People are now without jobs, without paychecks, selling off items they own in order to keep the roof over their heads. And what do you say to the energy workers that were once making 6 figures or more that are now making 0 because of policies of this Liberal government? And I'm actually quite shocked. I think shocked's the right word. The fact that we're not even coming back, we don't have the minister standing in front of us with a plan. You'd think they would be preparing for this result. Both sides. A positive court ruling, a negative court ruling, and they would be ready for that. But yet, we're sitting here, the members across the way saying, well, we'd like to work on this a little bit more. Well, that's not really reassuring to the thousands that are waiting to get back to work. People who want to work, that are now without a paycheck and without direction. We can't even get a commitment on when shovels will be back in the ground. So we can at least say, yes, eventually it will, on this date. We can't get a date from this government. It's like they're running around now trying to figure out what is next. Meanwhile, they haven't even taken those thoughts forward, that they should be preparing for that and coming to Parliament, coming to this committee with a plan to move this forward. And I am just, go back to shocked that we are not here discussing their solution to this problem that they caused. And we have called right from day one when they approved that pipeline, the Trans Mountain pipeline. You need to get in front of this over and over again. You need to get in front of this. You need to talk to the people in British Columbia. You need to do everything you can to move this forward because we agreed with their decision to approve that pipeline. And yet they didn't. They just seemed to hope that everything would fall into place by pure magic. And clearly it didn't. One problem after another. And despite repeated calls from the opposition, what's your plan? We threw out ideas, still nothing. And they just went back to the same old talking points. It will get built, almost like we've got this under control, and one failure after another. The Prime Minister should have been out to British Columbia to speak with the new Premier when he was sworn in. He avoided that over and over again. These conversations should have happened. And what happened? All sides dug in, and now we are at the situation we're at now. Here we are, with no plan to move forward, people's lives on the line because they've just lost their paycheck. Do they stay in their houses? Is there some light at the end of the tunnel? I can also tell you from Bill C-69, and I'll go back to the Ontario route, even those in Northern Ontario in the mining sector, they are quite concerned with this bill as well. There is no certainty for major projects in this country anymore. And we continue to see investment flee this country under this government. And what happens after that happens? We also start to lose major talent from this country because they will go elsewhere where the jobs and opportunity are. So I was hoping there would be a plan, a path forward, but yet we just have failure after failure. And think of our position with our issues with Saudi Arabia right now had Energy East been moving forward. Just think of the jobs and opportunity out there if we were able to get Alberta Energy out east. And that was just a pipeline that's made, most of it's already there. It was just a addition on each end. So I obviously will support Ms. Stubbs' motion. It's a common sense motion. And hopefully we can get some answers for those people that are now without a paycheck. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schmale. Mr. Falk, you're next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I too want to add my comments to this meeting and why we're here. And I think I want to start off by just indicating I think the Prime Ministership of Justin Trudeau will be marked as a time of failure. Will go down in history as a period of failure. Failure to balance a budget, failure to reduce debt, failure on the international stage, failure with trade agreements, failure to establish a plan for illegal migrants crossing our borders, and now failure to develop our natural resources, failure to build pipelines. You know, we find ourselves in a situation that not that many months ago we had a company, an American-based company, Kinder Morgan, wanting to expand their pipelines to accommodate the sale of our natural resources to Asian markets, where we don't have to take a discounted price of 50 cents on a dollar, but we could sell it at market price. Wanting to build a pipeline so that would enable our resource companies and our natural resources to be sold for what they're worth. And all they were asking for was to approve an expansion project. They wanted the Liberal government to help them go through the regulatory process to get approval to build the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. And then we have a government that, contrary to what the members on the other side say, moving forward with confidence, moved forward with arrogance and bought this pipeline, an unnecessary purchase of $4.5 billion for a pipeline that was valued at $2.5 billion on the existing owner's books. And that $4.5 billion didn't build 1 centimeter of new pipe. It paid for the right to operate the existing pipe and to apply to build an additional pipe. And then with arrogance, this government proceeded to seek the approval of building this expansion without going through without having properly gone through the process required by the regulatory governing bodies to get this approval, without proper consultation with our First Nations, whom they say there is no more important relationship than that with our Indigenous people. The courts have found that they failed to properly consult, and they also failed to properly take into consideration environmental issues associated with increased tanker traffic. This is a Liberal government under the leadership of Justin Trudeau that is an utter failure on almost everything it does. And this is just another example, and I think as a committee it's very important that we take this time immediately to find out what has happened, what has gone wrong, and what will be the plan to move forward so that we can get our 8,000 energy or construction workers back on the job, building pipeline, and put our energy workers back on the job, creating energy and selling our energy to international markets. And so I want to strongly echo my support for Shadow Minister Stubbs' motion here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. We've heard from just about are we in a position to vote on this now? I need a yes or no on that question before I...
One quick question to the Liberal side of the table.
I can't hear you.
Just one quick question to the Liberal side of the table. I just want to clarify.
Well, we're not really in a question and answer phase here, Mr. Cannings. If you have some brief...
To know whether we actually own this pipeline or not.
That's not, this isn't the forum for that question. Okay, so I take it then we are now in a position to vote on Ms. Stubbs' motion? Okay. Recorded vote? That's fine. Okay. All in favor of the motion read into the record by Ms. Stubbs?
Mr. Harvey.
Nay.
Mr. Tan.
No.
Mr. Whalen.
No.
Mr. Sarre.
No.
Ms. Fortier.
No.
Ms. Stubbs.
Yes.
Mr. Falk.
Yes.
Mr. Schmale.
Yeah.
Mr. Canning.
Yay.
Okay, motion defeated. There being no other business on the agenda, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.